All right, today we're digging into a really provocative theory from a professor named Jean Joaquin. And I gotta tell you, it might completely change the way you think about money, wealth, and yeah, even poverty itself. It all kicks off with this one big question. I mean, think about it. If our financial system can literally create money out of thin air, and trust me, we're gonna get into exactly how that works, then why are people still poor? It just doesn't seem to add up, right? Well, that's the central puzzle we're gonna try and solve today. Okay, so to really get what the professor is saying, we've got to go way back, like all the way back to the birth of paper money. It all started because, rich merchants needed a better, safer way to do business. So picture this. It was actually pretty simple at first. A merchant would take their gold, their actual physical gold, and deposit it in a bank to keep it safe. The bank would then issue a receipt, basically an IOU, a piece of paper that said, yep, we owe you this much gold, come get it whenever you want. But then something interesting happened. People figured out it was way, way easier to just trade these paper receipts instead of lugging around heavy, clunky bags of gold. I mean, who wants to do that? And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. That piece of paper, it wasn't actually money. It was worthless on its own. Its only value came from the shared belief, the trust that you could walk into that bank and get your gold back. The entire system, the whole shebang, was built on nothing more than that promise. But, and this is where the story gets really good, the banks realized something. They realized they could use that trust to their advantage. And what they did next, well, it basically changed the history of money forever. So let's use the professor's example to make this super clear. Let's say a bank is holding $5 million worth of gold in its vault. This is real physical gold that depositors have left there for safekeeping. Okay, so what happens when someone comes in and asks for a loan? You think the bank would lend them some of that gold, right? Nope. What they do is they just print a new receipt, a brand new promise for another $5 million. And poof, just like that, they've doubled the amount of money floating around. Think about it. The gold in the vault is still only $5 million, but now there are receipts for $10 million being passed around. They literally created $5 million out of thin air, based on nothing but trust. Now, as Professor Zhang points out, this whole system, printing way more promises than you have actual gold to back them up, it's super, super fragile. In fact, it had two giant built-in risks that could bring the entire house of cards crashing down. So risk number one is something called a bank run, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I mean, what happens if word gets out that the bank might be in trouble and everyone with a receipt shows up on the same day wanting their gold back? Well, the bank is toast. It can't pay. It only has $5 million in gold to cover $10 million in promises. The second that trust disappears, the whole bank just collapses.
And the second huge threat? Well, it came from their biggest clients, kings and nobles. You see, banks would lend these guys massive fortunes to go fight wars. But here's the problem. What's stopping a powerful king after he's won his war from just turning around and saying, hey, thanks for the loan, but I'm not paying you back. What are you going to do about it?
So this is where the professor's theory really starts to take shape. To protect themselves from, collapsing banks and deadbeat kings, the most powerful banking families decided to team up. They formed what were basically cartels. They'd even intermarried to solidify the alliances. The idea was to have each other's backs during a bank run and to work together to force rulers to pay up. And according to the professor, this power structure, this was the original blueprint for what we now call central banking. Okay, so let's bring it all back to that first question we asked. We've just seen how the banking system can essentially create money from nothing. It's this almost infinite resource, which, when you think about it, makes the fact that poverty even exists, well, it makes it even more confusing, doesn't it? Right? If banks can just print money, why is anyone poor? Now, the standard answer you always hear is scarcity. There just isn't enough to go around. But Professor Zhang's entire point is that money itself isn't scarce at all. It's practically infinite. So why not just create more of it and solve poverty? And this is where Professor Zhang drops his bombshell. According to him, the point of the system isn't to give people money or to end poverty. No. The point is to create the illusion that money is scarce and valuable, so that you and I will work our butts off to earn it. So get this. In his view, poverty isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's there on purpose. The logic is kind of dark, but it goes like this. By having poverty and suffering visible to everyone, it creates this artificial misery that keeps the rest of us in line. We see how bad things can be, and it scares us into working hard in school, getting a job, and doing whatever it takes to avoid that fate. And he doesn't stop there. The professor argues that even things like massive economic crises or wars, they actually serve a purpose in this system. They act like a giant reset button. They destroy huge amounts of money and wealth, which makes the whole thing feel scarce, invaluable, all over again. It basically reinforces the illusion and keeps us all motivated to keep working.
So what are we supposed to do with all this? Well, Professor Zhang wraps it all up with a really powerful modern analogy that I think makes it all click. He says, think about a game like World of Warcraft. You spend all your time running around, doing quests, working hard to get game credits so you can buy cool stuff. Now, the people who designed the game could just give everyone infinite credits, right? Of course they could. But if they did that, the game would be pointless. Nobody would play. The whole point is the struggle. And he says, our world? It's exactly the same.
And that's the wild idea he leaves us with. Could it be that our entire economy is just a really, really complex game? A game that isn't designed to make everyone wealthy, but is actually designed with an illusion of scarcity just to make sure we all keep playing? It's a pretty radical way to look at the world, for sure, but it's definitely something to chew on.